In my previous life, I recognized my family as a daughter, only to be tormented to death in the Marquis's manor. Since they didn't care about a daughter, then what if I were a son? I came to the Marquis of Junbei's residence and handed over a piece of jade pendant. I am his biological son. 1. You say you're my biological son. The Marquis of Junbei's sharp gaze swept over me from head to toe, his face full of suspicion. With a calm expression, I took out a highly prized jade pendant from my bosom. Although it was covered in scratches and chips, the Marchioness beside him still recognized at a glance that it was one of the jade pendants the Emperor had once bestowed upon the twins. When it had gone missing back then, they had been frightened for a long time, terrified that the Emperor would hold them accountable. The Marquis of Junbei wore an inscrutable expression, and in the end he set the jade pendant on the table. An identity cannot be confirmed by a single jade pendant alone. What if the midwife you mentioned merely stole the pendant? The son he had raised for more than a decade was actually fake. This was a matter that concerned the continuation of his bloodline, and he would not believe it lightly. Everything I know was told to me by the midwife who raised me. I can't persuade the Marquis. So let me and the young lord each drip blood to verify our identities, then it will be clear at a glance who is true and who is false. The hall fell silent. I could feel the Northern Expedition Marquis's suspicious, appraising gaze on me, but I merely lowered my head quietly, as if none of this had anything to do with me. Steward Wu, go prepare it. Also, have Mingyuan brought over, master. In the end, the Marquis of Junbei accepted my suggestion. The corners of my mouth lifted slightly. After all, he was his son, and this concerned the succession of the Marquis of Junbei's household. Naturally, he would not dare be careless, even if he favored and was reluctant to part with that heir apparent. He would not be as emotional as the Marchioness. The hall fell into silence, and apart from me, everyone was deep in thought. Soon, a burst of footsteps and a young girl's complaining voice came from outside the room. What are you looking for my brother for, Mom and Dad? Didn't you promise to go out with me to buy rouge? Don't be anxious, sister. Once I've seen Mom and Dad, I'll take you there. Hearing that voice so familiar it had seeped into my bones, I turned around. And just in time saw Lu Mingzhu link her arm through Lu Mingyuan's as they came in, one with a sweet and lovely face, the other mature and steady, now coaxing the woman beside him with an indulgent expression. What a well-matched pair of handsome and beautiful siblings. Junbei Marquis briefly recounted what had happened, and Lu Mingyuan froze, his expression stiff. He had not expected that he was not his parents' child, nor the heir of the Junbei Marquis residence. This matter had far exceeded what he could bear. As for Lu Mingzhu, things were much simpler. She was still the daughter most doted on by their parents, arrogant and overbearing, and immediately ordered people to drive me out. Where did this beggar come from, spouting nonsense here? He's not my brother. Get him out of here. After saying that, she hugged Lu Mingyuan's arm. I only recognize him. He's my brother. Lu Mingyuan looked at the sweet and radiant Lu Mingzhu, and his heart was filled with emotion, his gaze lingering tenderly. Presumptuous, how can the Lu family's bloodline allow you to be so willful? Butler Wu, prepare the blood-tethered kinship test. The Marquis of Junbei was furious. He slammed the table, and no one dared to say a word. Everyone stared nervously at the blood in the two basins of water. My blood and the Northern Marquis's blood quickly merged, and the Northern Marquis gave me a complicated look. As for Lu Mingyuan and the Northern Marquis, their blood came into contact, but then quickly separated again. This is impossible. Lu Mingyuan could not accept it and looked at me with a twisted, ferocious expression. It must have been you. What did you do? He grabbed my clothes in a single motion, lifting my slight body into the air, but I still kept a calm expression, my gaze steady. Stop. Even if the Marquis of Junbei did not want to accept it, he could no longer turn a blind eye to this. It was a matter concerning the continuation of the bloodline. Father, do you not want me anymore? Lu Mingyuan looked at his respected father in disbelief. He had not yet come to terms with the fact that he was not the heir to the Marquisate. Even if he wasn't, he had been carefully raised by the Marquis of Junbei for more than 10 years, and he had never expected everything to be turned upside down overnight. The hurt look on his face made the Marquis of Junbei deeply unwilling to bear it, so he turned his face away. Yuana, father and mother haven't abandoned you, it's just that everything happened too suddenly. Go back and rest first. The Marchioness was not as restrained as the Marquis of Junbei. Seeing her son suffering, she immediately stepped forward to comfort him. Lu Mingzhu looked smug, her tone full of provocation. "We are the real family here. Don't even think about stepping through the doors of the Marquis's residence. Get back to your countryside where you belong." 3. I said nothing. Only someone as simple-minded as Lu Mingzhu would think that as long as she had her parents' love, nothing else mattered. But that was indeed the case, except that sons and daughters were ultimately different. "Shut up, he's your older brother. You're not allowed to be disrespectful to him again in the future." Even more shocking as it was, the Northern Marquis accepted the fact very quickly. Madame felt sorry for Ming Yuan, and how could he not feel sorry for him as well? After all, he was the son he had raised by his side for more than 10 years. But the bloodline of the Lu family must never be mixed up, even if Ming Yuan hated him for it. The next day, news of the true and false heirs of the Marquis's residence spread throughout the capital. The Northern Marquis prepared many things for me and sent me to a school in the capital. Lu Mingyuan was naturally going to attend school as well. He had originally been about to sit for the imperial examinations, and with his abilities, securing an official rank would have been no problem. Add to that the backing of the Junbei Marquisate, and his future had been bright indeed. But now, everything had been ruined. Everyone at the school was very interested in me, at least on the surface. They all wore friendly expressions. Although the coursework was difficult, I still prepared diligently. Days passed like this one by one. I gradually grew accustomed to life in the Marquisate, and the servants also began to treat me as the heir apparent. No one said anything about how to deal with Lu Mingyuan. They simply let him continue living in the residence. It seemed that as long as no one spoke of it, they would not have to face the bloody reality. Unable to accept being reduced from the lofty heir of the Marquis's estate to an ordinary person dependent on others, Lu Mingyuan stayed in his courtyard all day, with only Lu Mingzhu going to keep him company every day at the Marquis's household dining table. Only I, the Marquis of Junbei, and his wife would sit. "Xiaoan, the master speaks highly of you. Though you started late, you make up for it with your intelligence. Why not try your hand at this exam as well?" The Marquis of Junbei was beaming. Although this son had not received careful upbringing, he was naturally bright. With time, he might not be unable to catch up as expected of his son. The Marquis of Junbei, I agreed, and when I lifted my head, I saw that the Marchioness's expression was odd. Though she wore a relieved smile, there was worry in her brows and a faintly resentful look in her eyes. For every day I would go to the Marquis's wife's place and spend a while with her. After I finished telling her about the amusing happenings at the academy that day, she suddenly let out a sigh, her face full of worry. "Mother, are you tired? Why don't I take my leave first so you can have a good rest?" "Xiaoan, wait a moment first." The Marquis's wife took my hand, her face filled with comfort. "You're a good child. You've really had it hard all these years." "It's nothing," I said, shaking my head, a faint smile on my lips. Being able to return to my own parents now is already a blessing. What's past is past. You're a good child. Lady Hu sighed, a hint of struggle in her gaze. "There is something Mother would like to ask of you." "Mother, if there's anything you need, please just say so. There's no need to be so polite." "It's not that I'm being polite, I just don't want to break your heart," said the Marquise, shaking her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Although Yuana is not my biological son, after so many years of raising him and living with him, he has also cared for me sincerely. I truly cannot bear to turn a blind eye and leave him alone." Tears streamed down the Marquise's face, and she looked utterly pained. "Mother, I understand," I said solemnly, nodding. "I will speak to father about this matter." Watching the Marquise let out a sigh of relief, I suppressed the sarcasm in my heart. So, during dinner in the evening, I brought up the matter of my father taking Lu Mingyuan as his adopted son. The Marquis of Junbei sized me up without revealing any emotion, and I met his gaze calmly. He praised me a few times, then immediately sent someone to call Lu Mingyuan over. With him came Lu Mingzhu, whose face was full of wariness. "All right, stop looking at your father like that, as if I'm going to do anything to harm your brother Mingyuan." Junbei, who was in high spirits, with none of his usual gloom, Lu Mingzhu let out a cold snort and turned her face away without speaking. "Mingyuan, a lot has happened in the residence lately, and you've been wronged these past few days. Although you're not my biological son, The friendship we've built over so many years is not fake, so I've decided to take you as my godson. From now on, you can stay in the residence openly and above board. Father, is it true? Lu Mingyiju rushed forward in a hurry, throwing her arms around her own father. The Marquis of Zhenbei laughed and scolded her for not knowing the rules. Lu Mingyuan also expressed his gratitude, and the Marquis of Zhenbei looked at him with even greater satisfaction. The Marchioness was also beaming with joy. 5. After the father and son filial display over there was finished, Lu Mingzhu cast a haughty glance at me, who was standing silently beside her. Some people shouldn't think too highly of themselves or assume they're so important. Keeping a low profile is the best course of action. Hearing this, Marquis Zhenbei frowned and rebuked her softly. Mingzhu, is that any way to speak to your brother? This matter was raised by your brother to begin with. From now on, we'll all be family, so don't be so willful anymore. Lu Mingzhu let out a disdainful snort, but said nothing. Father, please don't blame my younger sister. We'll all be family from now on. Brother Mingyuan, my teacher often praises your studies. May I ask you for guidance if I have questions in the future? Under my eager gaze, Lu Mingyuan reluctantly nodded. The Marquis of Zhenbei was quite pleased with this. 7. After going through a storm, the Marquis of Zhenbei's manner once again returned to its former warmth and peace, at least on the surface. At dinner, everyone gathered together. Every time, Lu Mingzhu would help Lu Mingyuan vie for favor, and by the way sideline me, talking about things that only the four of them knew. The Marquis of Zhenbei and the Marchioness, while reminiscing about the warmth of the past, felt guilty toward me. I ate quietly, occasionally showing interest in and longing for these things at the right moments, and they, in turn, relaxed. The eldest princess held a birthday banquet, and all the prominent families in the capital came. It was my first time attending such a grand feast. As one of the protagonists in the story of the true and false young masters, my appearance also drew quite a bit of attention. However, most people were very kind. I spoke with them openly and gracefully, with proper etiquette and an unassuming yet confident demeanor, earning much praise. The Marquis of Zhenbei grew more and more satisfied with me. His son, goblets clinked in toast, music from strings and pipes filled the air, when a sudden scream broke the surface calm. A crowd of women had gathered by the lotus pond, each one in a panic, as if someone had fallen in the chaos. It seemed someone jumped in. I recognized him as one of the famous idle young nobles of the capital, from a decent family but spending his days drinking, feasting, and carousing, the sort of man proper young ladies avoided at all costs. Soon the person who had fallen in the water was pulled out, and amid the clamor, the three words Lu Mingzhu stood out especially clearly. The Marchioness's face went deathly pale, and her eyes turned red at once. The cup in the hands of the Marquis of Zhenbei beside me clattered to the ground, and Lu Mingyuan rushed out immediately, snatching Lu Mingzhu from that man's arms. Amid the chaos, I smiled in satisfaction. With her reputation ruined, Lu Mingzhu caused a scene on the spot at the Grand Princess's residence, insisting that someone had pushed her into the water and demanding that the Marquis of Zhenbei find the culprit. However, the scene had been in utter turmoil, and no amount of investigation could uncover anything conclusive. She suspected several noble ladies who were closest to her, while Lu Mingyuan was like a sharp sword, striking wherever it pointed. In the end, he still failed to find the culprit and instead offended all those families, with the banquet ruined. The eldest princess was not in a good mood either. 8. After something like this happened, Lu Mingzhu hid in her own room, and the whole family revolved around her every day. I also went to see her a few times, but every time she saw me, she became agitated and said I had come to watch her make a fool of herself. In the end, Marquis of Zhenbei had no choice but to tell me not to appear in front of her anymore. Before leaving, he even patted my shoulder and said that I had been wronged. After Lu Mingzhu's accident, Lu Mingyuan became attentive and caring toward her day and night, looking after her in every possible way. When Marquis Zhenbei saw Lu Mingyuan caring so much about Lu Mingzhu, he was greatly relieved. However, if they were to learn the truth, I wonder whether they would still feel so relieved. I burned the letter in my hand, feeling a little expectant. Lu Mingzhu, whose once fading notoriety had flared up again in the past 2 days, was being talked about by everyone once more. Because the scion of a prestigious family whom she had saved had come to propose marriage. But how could Lu Mingzhu possibly marry such a dissolute playboy? Marquis Junbei was also seething with anger, so the two families clashed fiercely at the slightest disagreement. That man was a complete rogue. When his proposal was rejected, he stood outside the Marquis's residence hurling insults, causing a huge uproar across the city. Now, even when she sees me, she doesn't have the mood to target me anymore. All she can do is cry. I was in quite a good mood about this, and the rumors and gossip in the schoolhouse did nothing to stop me from going about my studies. Lazily lying in bed to review my lessons, I noticed someone outside the window, standing in the shadows. I couldn't make out their face, but their tone was respectful. "Master, the fish has taken the bait. The timing is perfect," I said with the look of someone eager for a good show. "Since they've already set the stage, we'll have to put on a performance that really makes a splash. Go lead them over there." "Yes." The black figure outside silently left. After calculating the time, I shouted to my maid, "Bring the soup over. Tonight, it's time to go and show filial respect to father and mother." Father was not in the study, and mother's courtyard was empty as well. Unexpectedly, I ran into the two of them on the way back, with Lu Mingyuan being held down behind them. I glanced at it curiously, seeing that I said nothing. Junbei Marquis simply told me to follow him to the main hall 9. As soon as we stepped into the main hall, the Marquis of Junbei raised his cane and struck Lu Mingyuan hard on the leg, knocking him flat to the ground. "Father, Master, Lady Hu," and I cried out in surprise at the same time. She was genuinely concerned. "While I was just putting on a show." "Shut up." The Marquis of Junbei roared viciously at Lady Hu. This was the first time I had ever seen him treat her with such an attitude. "Your precious son was raised by you, and even now you're still trying to shield him. They committed such an immoral, egregious act, and as his mother, you bear the brunt of it first." Lady Hu's tears fell at once, her face filled with an embarrassed expression. "Father, what exactly did Brother Mingyuan do wrong?" The whole thing was very simple. Junbei Marquis and his wife, on a whim, wanted to visit Lu Mingyuan's courtyard to check on this cheap son of theirs. To their surprise, when they pushed the door open, they saw Lu Mingzhu and Lu Mingyuan in bed together, their clothes in disarray. After interrogation and inspection, it was discovered that this had happened more than once or twice. Junbei Marquis was so furious that he nearly fainted on the spot. After hearing the whole story, I wore an expression of utter disbelief and shock. "Anna, what do you think about this?" I paused for a moment in thought. "Father, perhaps my sister did this because she didn't want to marry the wastrel young master of the Song family. Brother Mingyuan is deeply attached to her as well, and in her panic, she made such a foolish mistake. I think we shouldn't be too harsh on my sister. After all, she was frightened before, and it was also because we didn't take good care of her that she went astray." My sincere and forgiving words made the Marquis of Junbei nod repeatedly. After all, Lu Mingzhu was his own daughter. How could his own daughter possibly be at fault? However, she did indeed do something wrong. First, confine her to her room to teach her a lesson. The Marquis of Junbei looked down at Lu Mingyuan on the ground again, his eyes filled with disgust. "Yingzhu was frightened and isn't thinking straight. What about you? Are you not thinking straight either? Or are you really coveting Mingzhu, the young lady of the Marquis's manor?" The Marquis of Junbei narrowed his eyes dangerously. At this moment, Lu Mingyuan was no longer the foster son he had raised for more than 10 years, but an enemy coveting the power of the Marquis's manor and willing to stop at nothing to scheme against him. 10. Lu Mingyuan had always treated Lu Mingzhu as his own younger sister and cherished her sincerely, but the moment he learned that he was not the Marquis's heir, he immediately turned on his biological sister. This shows that he is vicious and will stop at nothing, so he became even more enraged. "Guards, seize this shameless little thief and lock him up in the woodshed." "Master, absolutely not. Yuana is going to take the exam in 2 days. We mustn't ruin his future." Looking at the wife standing in his way, Marquis Junbei felt for the first time that this wife of his was utterly unable to distinguish right from wrong. She already had an outstanding biological son, yet she still could not let go of her former child. Women are simply incapable of accomplishing great things. "Quickly drag him away." Master, Anna, hurry and help me persuade your father." Lady Hu saw that she could not persuade the Marquis of Junbei, so she turned her attention to me, completely ignoring the Marquis of Junbei standing nearby, his expression one of frustration that I refused to rise to the occasion. "Father," before I could finish speaking, The Marquis of Junbei cut me off. "No, father. I'm not trying to plead for brother Mingyuan," I went on speaking. "I'm reminding father to make more plans for my younger sister. Now that this has already happened, I'm afraid her marriage prospects will be affected. Rather than letting her marry down and suffer grievances, it would be better to—" I didn't finish my sentence, but everyone present understood. The Marquis of Junbei also fell into thought. This daughter was already ruined, now only this son remained. He could not let the daughter's affair spread and affect the son's future. This is indeed not a bad idea, it's just, a former brother and sister becoming husband and wife would inevitably become the butt of jokes. "Father, why not wait until brother Mingyuan has finished the competition and achieved a good ranking before announcing this news? That way, it will also be easier to explain." Anna makes a very good point. The Marquis of Junbei gave me an approving glance, and when his gaze returned to Lu Mingyuan, it was filled with disgust. "If you fail to win a good ranking in this competition, then don't expect to ever set foot in my Marquis of Junbei's residence again." I caught the resentful look hidden beneath Lu Mingyuan's outward respect. 12. The atmosphere in the Marquis of Junbei's residence had been rather gloomy these past 2 days. To keep what happened that night from spreading, the Marquis of Junbei personally handled quite a few servants. But this had nothing to do with me. In the blink of an eye, the day of the exam arrived, and I got up early in the morning to wash and get ready. When I reached the main hall, I saw that the others had already arrived. Lord Junbei sat there with a stern expression, and only when he saw me did a few traces of a smile appear. Lu Mingyuan stood off to the side with his head lowered, while the Marchioness was beside him, earnestly giving instructions. Seeing me come in, the Marchioness looked a little flustered, then quickly put on a loving smile. "Anna, how did you rest? Mother has prepared food for you to take to the exam hall. Don't let yourself go hungry." I gave a slight smile. "Thank you, Mom." The Marquise's wife then looked at Lu Mingyuan, who was silent beside her, and said, "Mingyuan, Mother has prepared your food. You needn't worry about anything else, just focus on the exam and do your best to achieve a good ranking." I sneered inwardly. To me, it was "don't let yourself go hungry," but to Lu Mingyuan, it was "go and get a good result." What a biased mother. The atmosphere among the family of four was eerie yet harmonious, when Steward Wu suddenly ran in. "Master, the eldest miss has run away." "What? How could you let her run away? What were the people guarding outside even doing?" The Marquis of Junbei was enraged. "Master, the maids and old women didn't hear a thing. In just the space of a quarter of an hour, the eldest young lady was gone." The Marquis of Junbei was about to curse when I quickly spoke up. "Father, could it be the work of some evildor?" As soon as those words were spoken, everyone present changed expression. "Don't make a fuss about this. You two hurry up and take the exam. I'll look into it." When Lu Mingyuan and I arrived outside the exam hall, someone slipped a note into each of our hands. I glanced at the note in my hand, then looked at Lu Mingyuan not far away, his gaze full of struggle. Seeing him finally choose to destroy the paper, I looked at him with blatant mockery. Then, wearing an anxious expression, I turned to the servant beside me and handed him the note. "I've found a clue to my sister's whereabouts. Take this note to find the Marquis. I'm going to look for my sister first." Young master, the exam is what matters," I snapped. "If I miss this exam, I can take it again, but I only have one younger sister, so stop talking nonsense." After saying that, I ran off. The servant couldn't stop me, so he had no choice but to hurry off and find the Marquis. 13. I was headed out of the city, but where no one could see me, I made a turn and eventually arrived at a secluded courtyard. As soon as I stepped through the door, a man in black appeared before me. "Where is Lu Mingzhu?" The man in black removed his mask, revealing a stern, noble-looking face, and spoke indifferently. "She's been thrown inside. The others have also been taken in." After hearing this, I walked inside. Just as I was about to peek in, a strong arm stopped me. "Don't go, it's dirty." I frowned. "Chu Ci, this is my business." Chu Ci looked unhappy, but still stepped aside. I walked in and looked inside through the crack in the window. The beggar Chu Ci had brought in had already lunged at Lu Mingzhu, and Lu Mingzhu kept crying and howling, but had no power to fight back. "Stop looking." Chu Ci came up and blocked my view. This time, I said nothing. "Has the tail been cleaned up?" "Don't worry, even if the Marquis of Junbei investigates, he'll only trace it back to the Song family. The Song family was the family of the pampered rich kid who had saved Lu Mingzhu. Only then did I finally show a smile. My tone quite pleasant. Chu Si, you've worked hard. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to handle Lu Mingzhu either. Lu Mingzhu's falling into the water was Chu Si's doing, so no matter how they investigated, they couldn't find anything. Chu Si's expression softened quite a bit. You saved my life. This is the least I should do. When I've avenged myself, you won't need to follow me anymore. You'll be free. His expression immediately turned cold, and I pretended not to see it. With my martial arts, I could easily help you kill the entire Zhenbei Marquis's family. There's no need for you to go to such trouble disguising yourself as a man. I raised my head and looked at his brows and eyes with tender intensity. Chu Si's gaze gradually softened, with a hint of lingering attachment in it. Chu Si, do you know what it means to kill someone by destroying their heart? 14. Father, over here, my clothes were in tatters, and my body was covered in wounds. Outside the city, I saw the Marquis of Zhenbei and his attendants. Anna, are you all right? The Marquis of Zhenbei hurried forward, looking worried. Father, I'm fine, it's just that my younger sister. What happened to Mingzhu? The Marquis of Zhenbei was somewhat excited. I'd better take you to see her. I hid her in a very safe place. Lu Mingzhu and I returned to the manor smoothly. The Marquis of Zhenbei locked himself in his study and would not allow anyone to disturb him. As for the maidservants around Lu Mingzhu, another round of them was cleared out. After Lu Mingyuan came back, he had kept himself locked in his room and refused to go out. It was said that the Marchioness had even cried from worry. In the end, the Marquis of Zhenbei came out and called Lu Mingyuan over, and the three of them argued fiercely in the study. Lu Mingyuan was so agitated that he accused the Marquis of Zhenbei of wanting to drive him out, so he had tampered with his food, causing him to have diarrhea the whole time during the exam and never get any writing done at all. The Marquis of Zhenbei rebuked him for making excuses for his poor performance and for being too opportunistic and materialistic, saying that although he had also received the note, he had destroyed it. The two of them broke off completely. Lu Mingyuan no longer hid his true self, and the Marchioness cried heartbreakingly between them before finally passing out. The Marquis of Zhenbei hurriedly sent for a doctor, while Lu Mingyuan cared nothing about whether she lived or died and returned to his own courtyard. This former heir apparent, once so proud and unyielding, had now completely put aside his dignity. He felt that the Marquis of Zhenbei had ruined his future, so he decided to stay here and refused to leave. After the Marquis of Zhenbei finished dealing with Madame's matter, he wanted to drive Lu Mingyuan out, but when he thought of Lu Mingzhu, he gave up the idea. All of this was told to me by Butler Wu. At this moment, he was beside me, wearing a respectful expression. The master is truly brilliant. He had me put something in the food first thing in the morning, ruining his prospects and even turning him against the Marquis. Butler Wu looked excited, his eyes filled with searing hatred. After all, it was Lu Mingyuan who had once tormented his only little granddaughter into a state worse than neither human nor ghost. Just to avenge Lu Mingzhu, I only told him the truth, and he chose to cooperate with me. No rush, his best days are still ahead of him. 15. Just when everyone in the Marquis's residence thought that the Marquis of Zhenbei would drive Lu Mingyuan out, the Marquis of Zhenbei suddenly decided to marry Lu Mingzhu to Lu Mingyuan. The matter of taking him as an adopted son was no longer mentioned publicly. It was only said that he would become a live-in son-in-law. As a result, people all over the capital were saying that Lu Mingyuan must have placed very high in this imperial exam, otherwise why would the Marquis of Zhenbei make such a decision? There were also some people who wondered why I didn't take part. The Marquis's residence's explanation was that I had suddenly fallen ill. The Marquis of Zhenbei became increasingly concerned about me and gave me many good things. As compensation, 5 days later, an elaborate but simple wedding ceremony was held inside the Marquis's residence, and Lu Mingzhu formally married Lu Mingyuan. Before Lu Mingzhu was married off, I had once seen her. Her brows and eyes were dark and sullen, her face manic, and the whole person looked like a deranged lunatic. After the Marquis of Zhenbei discovered that the Song family was behind Lu Mingzhu's abduction, he began to target them relentlessly. At first, the Song family didn't know the reason. Out of kindness, I had someone tell them why. and soon the whole capital knew that Lu Mingzhu had been defiled by a group of beggars. Lu Mingyuan was the last to find out, so he went to the Zhenbei Marquis's residence and caused a scene. I happened to be there that day, and in the face of Lu Mingyuan's accusations, I only heard the Zhenbei Marquis say casually, "You, the son of a rural village woman, were lucky to marry the eldest daughter of the Zhenbei Marquis's household. It was you who married above your station. From now on, you should focus on staying home with Mingzhu. The Zhenbei Marquis's residents will see that you lack nothing in food or clothing." Humiliated, Lu Mingyuan's eyes were bloodshot and his face contorted with rage. Even as the servants dragged him away, he was still cursing. "You did this on purpose. You bullied me because I have no power or influence, ruined my chances of passing the imperial exam, and then waited for the right moment to shove a tarnished, discarded woman at me. I spit on you. What foster son, what father and son, it's all lies. May you die a terrible death. Stop pretending to have such deep mother-son affection in front of me, and don't say it's for my future. It's disgusting." Bah. That final sentence successfully froze the Marquis's wife nearby in place, her face turning bitter. I lifted my cup to hide the smile at the corners of my mouth. Suddenly, my gaze caught a glimpse of a pale yellow hem behind a pillar. I froze for a moment, then smiled in secret. "Looks like there's going to be a good show." 16 Lately, rumors have been circulating throughout the entire Marquis's manor that the eldest young lady has been abusing her son-in-law, Lu Mingyuan, the heir apparent, and it's said she's even used a little whip on him. Everyone's enthusiasm was immediately stirred up. At first, some didn't believe it, but as more and more people accidentally heard about it, everyone gradually accepted it, some especially quick-witted. People even took the initiative to help the eldest young lady gather tools. The Marquis of Zhenbei also heard about it and did not express any opinion. The Marchioness, however, was worried, but Lu Mingyuan's words that day were like a thorn lodged in her heart, so she could only fret anxiously that day. Because of his good behavior, Lu Mingyuan was allowed to go out. He was sitting in a tavern, drowning his sorrows in wine, and after drinking for a while, he suddenly got up and followed a few people out of the city. Only after reaching outside the city did he realize that these people had kidnapped a richly dressed young master. Lu Mingyuan had pretty good martial arts, so he rescued the young master. After asking him a few questions, he led him into the city, and finally stopped in front of a grand mansion. It was none other than Prince Kang, the emperor's most favored son. Watching Lu Mingyuan walk into Prince Kang's residence, I finally stepped out from the shadows. "Go back and tell your master that the fish has taken the bait." The person behind me slipped away without a sound. Over the next half-month, I followed Marquis Zhenbei to familiarize myself with the court situation and met with the various high-ranking officials, while closely keeping an eye on Lu Mingyuan's movements. After he saved the Kang prince's son that day, the other party gave him a large sum of money, which he had long since spent on taverns and brothels. Once the money ran out, he went to look for the Kang prince again. After this happened several times, the Kang prince more or less stopped receiving him. Just after I instructed butler Wu to keep a close watch on Lu Mingyuan, I turned around and saw Chu Xi standing in the room, and my expression changed at once. "What are you doing here?" Chu Xi felt somewhat dissatisfied. Seeing my stern expression, he became even more aggrieved. "You haven't come to see me in a long time." I turned my head, my expression cold. "You already had me deal with Lu Mingzhu. We're even." Chu Xi frowned, his face full of disapproval. "You only need to help me deal with Lu Mingzhu, and that's enough." After being politely rebuffed by me, Chu Xi left in a huff, not forgetting to throw out a harsh warning before he went. "Fine, if you want to work with another man, go ahead. Let's see if you can walk away unscathed." 17 Today, after leaving the morning court session, the Marquis of Zhenbei was very displeased and threw quite a few precious porcelain pieces in his study. It was none of my business, so I kept out of it, but unexpectedly he sent someone to summon me. In the final years of the current emperor's reign, the situation in the court essentially revolved around the struggle for the throne. Although the emperor has quite a few sons, excluding matters of birth, age, and ability, there are only 5 or 6 who really count, and those 5 or 6 are divided into 2 factions. One was led by Prince Kang. Prince Kang was born to a favored imperial consort who had enjoyed the emperor's affection for many years. So he was much beloved by the emperor. The other was led by Prince Duan. Prince Duan was born to the empress, the mistress of the harem, giving him legitimacy and noble status, and he was also highly regarded by the emperor among the court ministers. Apart from those aligned with the two princes, the rest were the neutral faction led by the Marquis of Junbei and the loyalist faction led by the Grand Chancellor. The latter was largely overlooked by everyone, so the Marquis of Junbei became a target of contention between the two princes. During the court session today, Prince Duan suddenly brought up the matter between Lu Mingyuan and Yu, accusing me of poor household management, and even saying that I married Mingzhu to him just so he could inherit the title, claiming that I let emotions cloud my judgment and mixed up the bloodline. Anna, what do you think? Facing the thoughtful gaze of the Marquis of Junbei, I pondered for a moment. Father, setting the other matters aside for now, have you considered why Prince Duan suddenly turned against you? Marquis Junbei has recently been so overwhelmed by this pile of family matters that he was completely muddled. After my reminder, he finally came to his senses. I know, this matter is too complicated, Anna. So don't get involved for now. Son knows father is unwilling to take sides, but at this point Prince Duan is clearly intent on making father his enemy. If we still follow the old strategy, I'm afraid it won't end well. Marquis Junbei was stunned for a moment. Anna, gaining the merit of following the rightful ruler is not so easy. One wrong step, and the whole family could be wiped out. Father, I'm not asking you to take sides. What I mean is that Prince Duan has gone too far. Why not find an opportunity to give him a warning? Otherwise, wouldn't it mean that anyone could bully the Junbei Marquis's residence? This gave the Junbei Marquis pause for a moment. In Anna's opinion, how should we warn him? Father, I think a moderate warning would be enough. The best way would be to make things difficult for Prince Duan's merchant convoy, 18, throughout the Shun Kingdom, whether royalty, merchants, or commoners, all were eager to trade with other countries or ethnic groups, exchanging goods and then selling them on. Caravans of major figures like Prince Kang and Prince Duan mostly carry high-end goods, and their profits are immeasurable. They are also a major source of income and expenditure. Yeyun City is the most critical checkpoint on Shungua's trade routes, and it is also the domain of the Marquis Junbei. Make things difficult for them. This doesn't seem quite right. Marquis Junbei clearly backed down. Yeyun City was both a treasure and a hot potato. In the past, he had always enforced the law impartially and maintained strict discipline. At the center of such a storm, he did not want to leave anyone any leverage against him. Seeing his fear, I said with a smile, Father, if you are unwilling, then forget it. It's just that you'll need to be extra careful from now on. Father, I'm afraid Prince Duan will only become even more ruthless in going after you. Father was an upright official. But I'm afraid Prince Duan will pay even closer attention to the internal affairs of the Marquis of Junbei's household and then find fault and stir up trouble. That would be most troublesome. Although Lu Mingyuan and Lu Mingzhu are already married, if what happened in the past were to be exposed, His Majesty might very well punish him for poor household management, and that could affect the inheritance of the title. The Marquis of Junbei feared this most of all, so I reminded him of it as well. As expected, I moved him. Prince Duan has indeed gone too far. Anna, what you said makes sense. As your father, I must retaliate in this matter and restore the prestige of our Marquis of Junbei's household. Yes, father. I lowered my head, hiding the mocking yet triumphant smile at the corners of my mouth. More than a month had passed since then. Somehow, the Marquis of Junbei had acted, and Prince Duan no longer targeted him. Just as expected, however, I wasn't sure whether he had been frightened by the Marquis of Junbei's counterattack or was simply too busy to pay attention. After all, Prince Duan is the man of the hour in the court today, having resolved many regional crises such as floods and droughts, and having recommended many talented people to the imperial court. The emperor grew increasingly fond of him, and the empress likewise received unending favor. While the court was rife with intrigue and turmoil, here on Lu Mingyuan's side, Prince Kang had not allowed Lu Mingyuan to enter for a full month, and on Lu Mingzhu's side, things had become even more twisted. Lu Mingyuan was on the verge of collapse and desperate to get out of this den of evil. Now, everything was in place, and all that remained was the final favorable breeze. 19 That night, Lu Mingyuan ran out of the mansion again and came to a famous brothel on Flower Street. where he drowned himself in wine and indulgence, following the beauties around for pleasure. By the time he came to his senses, he was already outside a private room upstairs, and all around was eerily quiet. Then he heard a voice coming from inside the room that he knew all too well. Immediately mobilize the 100,000 troops outside the city to surround the imperial capital, the 1,000-strong guard in. The palace is already one of my people. By then, we will take control of the palace, kill the emperor and Prince Duan, and the world will be ours for the taking. Here's his King Kang's voice. Lu Mingyuan suddenly went weak at the knees, and the sound he made was immediately noticed by the people in the private room. Who's there? In the blink of an eye, Lu Mingyuan only saw a sharp blade striking toward him, blazing with light. 10 days later, on a quiet night, though only for the first half of it. In the latter half of the night, cries, screams, and the clash of weapons kept coming. Flashes of fire suddenly appeared in the distance, and the Marquis of Zhenbei gathered everyone together. After so long, I saw Lu Mingzhu again. Her former brightness and charm had been completely replaced by gloom. She looked at the distant firelight with a strange gaze. My heart stirred, and I looked around but did not see Lu Mingyuan. Father, where is brother Mingyuan? The Marquis of Zhenbei's expression darkened, and in the end he spoke viciously. It'd be best if you died outside and never came back. The chaos didn't subside until daybreak. Everyone finally let go of the tension they'd been holding, just about to go back to sleep, when an imperial decree came from the palace summoning the entire Marquis of Zhenbei's family to enter the palace. The Marquis of Zhenbei's face was gloomy, the others were either puzzled or understanding, and the 4-member family entered the palace in grand procession. This was my first time seeing His Majesty the Emperor. Though aged and frail, his gaze was still sharp and wise. When he saw us come in, he let out a cold snort. Marquis Zhenbei, do you plead guilty? A crowd of people immediately knelt down. I am dull-witted and do not know what I have done to anger your majesty. I beg your majesty to enlighten me. Dull-witted. The emperor let out a cold laugh. I see you are anything but dull-witted. You even had the nerve to plot a rebellion. 20. The Marquis of Zhenbei shuddered in fright and immediately kowtowed to admit his guilt. I would not dare. The emperor let out a cold snort. Bring him up. The one brought up was Lu Mingyuan, tightly bound with ropes. The instant he saw him, the Marquis of Zhenbei went pale. You despicable coward, you actually dare to rebel. Are you trying to bring ruin upon the Marquis's estate? The Marquis of Zhenbei was so furious that he was about to rush over and hit him, but the emperor stopped him. Marquis of Zhenbei, this is the heir of the Marquisate. Your son. Could his involvement in this rebellion not have been your idea? Your Majesty, please see the truth. He looked at me and pointed at me, saying, he is not my biological son. This is my biological son, the heir to the Marquisate. Oh. The emperor looked at me with interest a few times. Even if he is not your biological son, there is still more than a decade of raising him, and he has also become your son-in-law. Your Majesty, the Marquis of Zhenbei said with an air of shame, I married my daughter to him out of sheer necessity. This man is treacherous and cunning. Seeing that he was not the heir of the Marquisate, he seduced my daughter. Poor girl, ignorant and naive, fell into his trap. It was only for my daughter's reputation that I gritted my teeth and acknowledged this marriage. Is that so? The emperor glanced at the gloomy Lu Mingzhu and casually dropped a bombshell. But as far as I know, your ignorant daughter also took part in this rebellion, and even handed over your tiger Tally. What? The Marquis of Zhenbei looked at Lu Mingzhu in shock. The latter's face showed no expression, and the viciousness in her eyes was enough to send a chill down one's spine. You unfilial daughter. The Marquis of Zhenbei was so angry that he nearly fainted, but he dragged himself forward to explain, Your Majesty, I truly do not know about this. Seeing his demeanor, the emperor's expression also wavered somewhat. The two of them were, in a sense, in the same boat, both betrayed by the children they had indulged and cherished. Just as the emperor let out a sigh and was about to speak, I suddenly opened my mouth. Your Majesty, this commoner has something to report. 21. Everyone was stunned by my words. The Marquis of Zhenbei widened his eyes in disbelief. The emperor narrowed his eyes. You are a woman. Yes, I said calmly, neither servile nor overbearing. This commoner is not the heir of the Marquisate, nor the Marquis of Zhenbei's biological son, but rather his biological daughter. If your Majesty does not believe it, You may summon a matron to examine me. What about Lu Mingyuan, my biological elder brother, the legitimate son of the Marquis of Zhenbei, the heir of the marquisate?" As soon as I finished speaking, the Marchioness cried out in shock and immediately fainted. Although the Marquis of Zhenbei did not faint, his face turned pale and his body trembled. "You shameless woman, you've thrown the Marquis Manor into chaos, and I'll beat you within an inch of your life." The Marquis of Zhenbei struggled to contain his rage, intent on punishing me, yet the Imperial Guards held him back. He looked at me with a complicated expression. "Tell me everything you know." "Yes," I nodded. "Back then, the midwife switched me with a baby girl," meaning me, and Lu Mingzhu was the midwife's granddaughter. "She took me and her grandson away from the capital to live elsewhere. Then, until a fire 4 years ago, I barely survived, and on her deathbed she told me my true identity. So I took that jade pendant and the truth, and after many twists and turns, came to the Marquis's residence to tell them everything. But," I paused, "the Marquis did not acknowledge me. Instead, he ordered someone to lock me in the woodshed. I overheard the servants say that because I was only a daughter, the Marquis of Zhenbei didn't want my existence to tarnish the reputation of the household, so he planned to execute me outright." I was terrified, but the Marquis didn't kill me. Instead, he told me he could acknowledge me, but I couldn't appear as his daughter. I didn't understand at the time, but in order to stay alive, I agreed. I was secretly trained by him for 3 years. And it was only half a year ago that I appeared as the true heir of the marquisate. "I don't understand why your lordship would do this. Now I know, so it was to plot rebellion. I beg your majesty to investigate carefully, you vile woman." The Marquis of Zhenbei spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot, his eyes wide with rage. The emperor said nothing, only ordered that we be imprisoned. I was held separately 22 that night. Dozens of men in black came to my cell to silence me, but the Imperial Guard, who had been lying in ambush, caught them off guard. The battle was brutal, and in the end the men in black set a fire and perished together with them. The prisoner also died in the cell. Of course, that was only a decoy. The real me had already been rescued by Chu Ci and taken to a ruined temple outside the city. "Is this what happens when you work with him? If it weren't for me, you'd be dead already." I ignored Chu Ci's incessant chatter and simply looked at the purplish-black wound on his arm. "Got ambushed by someone hiding somewhere and got tricked. It's fine. Don't worry." I didn't say anything, just stared blankly into the night. Only after Chu Ci had finished tending to the wound did I look at him again. "Chu Ci, have you now lost all your inner strength and are your hands and feet numb? How did you know?" Chu Ci looked shocked, then deliberately tried to sound relaxed as he comforted me. "It's okay, it's very safe here. You don't need to worry." "Of course I don't need to worry," I said with a smile, "because you'll be dead soon." I stood up and took 2 steps back. "This poison is called Chishi-san. It will take your life within the time it takes 3 incense sticks to burn. I sprinkled it on your wound when you were carrying me just now." "You," Chu Ci sprang to his feet, then collapsed only a step away from me, his whole body convulsing. "Why?" I ignored his anguish, bent down, and looked at him mockingly. "You really are something else. Whoever saves you, you fall hopelessly in love with her. But you didn't expect it, did you? The one who saved you was actually Lu Mingzhu. After all, I was just a country bumpkin back then. How could I possibly have bought expensive medicinal herbs to treat your injuries? I merely intercepted you in advance so you would work for me. And even personally destroyed your own benefactor. I wonder how you feel about that now." Chu Ci's eyes widened slightly, his lips trembled as if he wanted to say something, but unfortunately he quickly lost all signs of life. I stood up coldly, stepping over his corpse, and dealt with another enemy. "It's almost over." 23. The capital was bustling with activity, crowds surging as everyone discussed the traitor who was to be executed today. Among them was the entire household of the Marquis of Zhenbei. I walked in the direction of the crowd. One prison cart after another rolled past between the rows of people, and at the very front was Prince Kang, dressed in plain clothes. The emperor would never kill him, for now. This was only to parade him through the streets and make him watch with his own eyes the scene of those who had followed him being executed by beheading. The Prince Kang in my memory, wrapped in fine robes, lofty and mocking toward me, was now nothing more than a man under indictment, condemned to spend the rest of his life in confinement. In the center of the procession was the family of Marquis Zhenbei, Madame, who was sobbing uncontrollably. Marquis Junbei looked ashen and defeated. Lu Mingzhu wore a gloomy expression, and Lu Mingyuan looked utterly mad, laughing wildly. No longer the nobility of old, once truly hauled onto the execution platform, with a large blade hanging over their heads at any moment. Everyone wore a dispirited expression. Suddenly, the Marquis of Junbei's gaze fixed on me. His expression changed, and he stood up in excitement, but before he could say anything, a large blade came down, and there was no chance to speak again. A cry of shock rose from the crowd. The beheading was already over, and I walked against the flow of people toward the city gates. Before leaving the city gate, I turned into a quiet alley and stopped. "Gentlemen, go back and tell your master that the deal is over. Don't stir up any more trouble." A few men in black appeared behind me. After a long silence, they finally left, and at last, I could set off with a light heart. 24. Having been reborn, I burned to death the midwife and her greedy, spoiled grandson in a fire, so no one could ever get in my way again. Then I went to Hanshan Temple and intercepted the life-saving kindness that was supposed to belong to Lu Mingzhu, cutting off one of her greatest sources of help. In my previous life, it was Chu Ci who secretly sent people against me, making me embarrass myself at all sorts of banquets and earning the disgust of the Beijing social circle. Even being rescued from drowning by a member of the Song family, and being ruined by a beggar, were both arranged by Chu Ci. In this life, I took revenge on them one by one, and I also had Chu Ci do all of it. I used the 3 years of torment I suffered in the Marquis's residence in my previous life to lay out my plans, and return to the Marquis's residence as a man, since they did not care about a daughter's bloodline. Then what about a son's? As expected, no matter how reluctant he was in his heart, the Marquis of Junbei still could not turn a blind eye to me, and even had to carefully plan for me. Meanwhile, I took the opportunity to sow discord between Lu Mingyuan and the Marquis's manor, and exposed his affair with Lu Mingzhu. In my previous life, he was driven to kill me precisely because I had caught them in the act. With all the events that had happened before, the Northern Pacification Marquis could no longer calmly accept the marriage between the two of them. He was no longer like in my previous life, when he had been overjoyed and ignored news of my death. In order to bring down the Junbei Marquis completely, I arranged for Lu Mingyuan to meet the Kang Prince, who had rebelled in my previous life. This naturally involved cooperation with the Duan Prince, and in the end, the once overbearing Junbei Marquis's manor became a prisoner behind bars, doomed to die. Here, trading with the Duan Prince may have been like courting a tiger for its hide, but considering the martial arts experts by my side, he ultimately did not continue to pester me, and after doing all of this, I was able to withdraw unscathed with the obsession in my heart finally gone. From this day on I could at last live however I pleased. The road ahead is long, and there is still much time to come. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I have known since childhood that I was destined to become the crown princess, yet on the night of the grand wedding, Crown Prince Xiao Qian deliberately entered the wrong bridal chamber and consummated his marriage with Qingning, the maid serving the empress. Qingning was the empress's most favored maid, having once taken a knife in her stead. Thus, the empress only fumed for a moment before giving her consent. My parents were instantly enraged. How could our Xie family, holding command over 700,000 troops, endure such humiliation? They wanted to storm the palace gates and plead for the emperor's intervention, but I gently tugged at their sleeves and urged them to endure it a little longer. That very day, I personally sought an audience with the emperor to plead for Xiao Qian. I beseech your majesty to allow Qingning to enter the Eastern Palace and fulfill the crown prince's wishes. She is merely a palace maid. I would not trouble myself over her. His heart does not belong to me, nor have I ever been moved by him. What I have always wanted was never Xiao Qian himself, but the honor of being the crown princess, the future position of empress, and the everlasting glory of the Xie family. The news that I pleaded on behalf of the crown prince, allowing Qingning to enter the Eastern Palace, spread throughout the palace and beyond in less than half a day. Reactions varied, with most people laughing at how the daughter of the Xie family had learned to compromise and endure even before being officially enfeoffed. Only my father, Upon hearing the 8 words I had my trusted aide bring back to the residence, "Hold your position, await future rewards," remained silent for a long while, ultimately suppressing the indignation of all his officers. 3 days later, the imperial decree was issued. The crown princess's investiture ceremony proceeded as scheduled, while Qingning, as a Liangdi, was quietly carried into the Eastern Palace through a side gate in a small sedan chair. On the same day, the investiture ceremony was grand and solemn. Dressed in the intricate and heavy crown attire of the crown princess, I ascended the white marble steps step by step under the gaze of civil and military officials. Receiving the golden book and seal from the ceremonial officer, Xiao Qian stood by my side, his face handsome and his posture upright, the very image of the perfect crown prince of the royal family. Yet in his gaze toward me, there was a trace of scrutiny and coldness that was hard to detect. I met his gaze, slightly curving the corners of my lips into a perfectly gentle and graceful smile. He was probably wondering why I wasn't crying or making a scene, and why I had even personally sent the one he loved to his side. He doesn't understand that what I've always wanted was never his condescending affection. On the night of the wedding ceremony, as expected, he did not come to my bedchamber. My maid Yunshu helped me remove my hairpins, unable to hide her indignation. His Highness the Crown Prince, after all, he went to Consort Qing's moon embrace pavilion. In the bronze mirror, my features remained as clear as ever, without a trace of disturbance. Leave. The candle flames flickered in the hall, leaving me alone. I walked to the window and looked toward the moon embrace pavilion, where the lights were ablaze. No doubt a scene of tender affection at its peak. There was no bitterness in my heart, only a cold, calculating stillness. Xiao Qian's move was too hasty and foolish. By humiliating me to elevate Qingning, he unwittingly placed both himself and his beloved on a blazing fire to be roasted. A favored concubine who caused the crown prince to lose his composure on his wedding night and brought shame upon his powerful in-laws would only become a living target in this devouring deep palace. The next morning, I sat upright in the main seat with the dignity of the crown princess, receiving the greetings of all the consorts in the Eastern Palace. Qingning arrived neither early nor late, wearing a dress of watery red, her eyes and brows carrying the charm of a night of spring romance and a faint, elusive sense of pride. She bowed according to etiquette, her voice soft and gentle. "Your humble servant, Qingning, pays respects to your Highness, the Crown Princess." I did not immediately ask her to rise. Instead, I picked up the teacup beside me, gently stirred the floating tea leaves, and calmly glanced at her slightly trembling fingertips. The hall fell into a deathly silence, with all the consorts holding their breath. After a moment, I slowly spoke, my tone gentle yet carrying an undeniable authority. "Rise, Consort Qing. Now that you have entered the Eastern Palace, you must abide by the rules from now on, serve the Crown Prince diligently, and focus on bearing heirs for the royal family. That is the proper path." I bestowed a set of gold head ornaments, identical to those given to all the other concubines, both to preserve her dignity and to quash any notion she might have of using them to assert her uniqueness. As she received the reward and expressed her gratitude, the hint of smugness on her face finally faded, replaced by a trace of caution. I looked at her and sneered inwardly. Xiao Qian might be able to give her favor, but what I hold in my hands is status, propriety, and the authority of the mistress of the Eastern Palace. The affection he gives is like flowing water, while the power I hold in my hands is the unshakable fortress. A few days later, at the palace banquet, the Empress deliberately called me to her side. Holding my hand, she spoke in a tone tinged with reassurance. "My dear child, you've been wronged, Qian." He was just momentarily confused. I lowered my eyelashes, adopting a deferential posture. "Your Majesty speaks too kindly. The Crown Prince's deep emotions and noble character are a blessing to the nation. Consort Qing once saved your Majesty's life, so it is only right that I treat her with kindness. As the Crown Prince's principal consort, it is my duty to prioritize His Highness in all matters and to ensure the stability of the Eastern Palace." The Queen looked at me, a trace of genuine appreciation and relief flashing in her eyes. What she needed was a crown princess who could tolerate others, understand the bigger picture, and stabilize the situation, not a jealous woman who would stir up trouble and disrupt the peace of the Eastern Palace. By the time I returned to the Eastern Palace, the night was already deep. Yunshu draped an outer robe over my shoulders and whispered, "Miss, today in the palace, why didn't you take the opportunity to ask Her Majesty the Queen?" I raised my hand to stop her words and walked over to the desk. On the desk lay the precious seal belonging to the Crown Princess, glowing with a warm yet cold luster under the candlelight. "Yunshu, look at this seal." I gently traced the delicate phoenix patterns on it, my tone calm and unruffled. "It represents authority, status, and the honor and disgrace of the Xie family. As for where the Crown Prince's heart lies," I lifted my gaze to the deep night outside the window, a faint smile curling at the corner of my lips. "What does it have to do with me?" The twilight deepened, and the red walls of the Eastern Palace reflected the last rays of the setting sun. It had been 3 months since Qingning entered the Eastern Palace, and Xiao Qian had indeed not set foot in my bedchamber again. During the day, he still maintained the decorum befitting a crown prince, accompanying me to the palace to pay respects and attend ceremonies. But once back in the Eastern Palace, his eyes would only follow the direction of the Moon Embrace Pavilion. Rumors began to spread in the palace, all saying that the Crown Princess held an honorable position in name only, but in reality, couldn't even keep a corner of the Crown Prince's robe. I paid no mind to it, calmly managing the palace affairs day by day as usual. When I went to pay respects to the Empress at Cunning Palace, I never complained, only presenting the Eastern Palace's accounts and expenditure arrangements clearly and properly. At first, the Empress offered a few words of comfort, but later, seeing me so unambitious, a trace of dissatisfaction inevitably crept into her expression. She could tolerate her son's temporary infatuation, but she could not tolerate the Eastern Palace remaining without a legitimate heir for long. The timing is almost right. That afternoon, as I was admiring the lotus blossoms in the waterside pavilion, Yunshu quietly approached and whispered, "Your Highness, everything has been arranged. A few days ago, Consort Qingning's brother happened to run into the third son of the Earl of Yongchang's family at the West Market. I idly scattered fish food into the pond, causing the koi to leap and compete for it. The third son of the Earl of Yongchang's household is a notorious playboy in the capital, especially fond of cockfighting and horse racing. Qingning's brother, ever since his sister gained power, had become quite full of himself and was most susceptible to provocation. A few flattering words like 'How could the imperial brother-in-law not know this?' were enough to make him lose his head. 'Has everything been arranged at the racetrack?' 'Absolutely foolproof. That horse has been tampered with. It will surely spook.' Before completing half a lap, the attendants by the side of the third young master of the Yongchang Earl are all our people." I nodded slightly. In just 2 days, tragic news reached the Eastern Palace. Qingning's brother had been thrown from his horse during a race when the animal suddenly panicked. Not only was he severely injured, but the horse also charged into the procession of Princess Kangning, who happened to be strolling nearby. The princess was so frightened that she fell ill, and the emperor was furious upon hearing the news. The moon viewing pavilion was immediately filled with cries and wails. Qingning knelt before Xiao Qian, her face streaked with tears, begging him to save her brother. Xiao Qian naturally wished to protect him. However, this matter involved a senior member of the imperial family, and the evidence was irrefutable. The moment he spoke up in front of the emperor, His Majesty sternly rebuked him. "For the sake of a concubine's brother, you would bend the law and disturb your imperial aunt. Xiao Qian, where is your sense of duty as the crown prince?" He was confined to the Eastern Palace, forbidden to leave without an imperial decree. A storm was brewing. I still go to the small Buddhist hall every day to pray for the princess and copy scriptures, as if the turmoil outside has nothing to do with me. 3 days later, someone from the Kuan-Ning Palace arrived. The empress, her face cold as frost, threw a written indictment to the ground. It listed numerous crimes committed by Qing Ning's elder brother, who, relying on the crown prince's influence, had forcibly seized civilian lands and allowed his servants to commit violence. The victims had jointly submitted a petition, which went straight to the censorate. "Crown Princess," the empress's voice was weary and cold, "do you admit your guilt?" I immediately knelt to the ground, my voice trembling with fear yet clear. "Please calm your anger, Mother Empress. It is my failure for not properly restraining the members of the Eastern Palace, which led to the elder brother of the Liangdi to commit errors and damage the imperial family's dignity. I am willing to accept punishment." I admitted my fault straightforwardly. taking all the responsibility for failing to restrain. Without mentioning Qingning at all, the Empress gazed at me for a moment, her expression complex, then waved her hand. Rise. This matter cannot be blamed on you. How could she not know where the root of the problem lay? It was precisely my incompetence and gentleness that highlighted the arrogance of the Moon Embrace Pavilion and the Crown Prince's reckless favoritism. Lime, in her desperate attempts to save her brother, cried and made a scene all day, clinging to the Crown Prince and causing such a commotion that everyone in the palace knew about it. Many people pointed fingers and gossiped that night. Xiao Qian was summoned to the imperial study. It was said that the emperor was so furious he smashed a teacup, and his angry shouts could be clearly heard even outside the door. If you continue to be so reckless, prioritizing personal feelings over duty, I doubt you'll remain crown prince for much longer. That Lime cannot stay any longer. Can't keep him. These 3 words struck like a thunderbolt, shattering every last shred of hope in Xiao Qian's heart. The emperor made it clear. Unless he consummates the marriage with me and quickly produces a legitimate heir to prove the stability of the Eastern Palace, he will not spare Qingning's brother lightly. Xiao Qian returned to the Eastern Palace with a heavy heart. He had intended to explain the emperor's conditions to Qingning, hoping she would understand his predicament, even considering whether they should simply abandon her brother. But before he could finish speaking, Qingning burst into tears and began making a scene, refusing to listen to any explanation and relentlessly pressuring him to save her brother at all costs. Xiao Qian looked at Qingning, who was crying her heart out and only concerned about her brother. Feeling a chill and bitterness in his heart, he gritted his teeth and asked, "Are you truly determined to save your brother, no matter what it costs me?" Without a second thought, Qingning replied firmly, "Yes, I must save him." The last glimmer of light in Xiao Qian's eyes faded, hardening his heart. He said, "Fine, since this is your choice, I will grant your wish." He stumbled into my bedchamber close to midnight. The desolate moonlight stretched his tall figure into a lonely and wretched silhouette. I was reading by the lamp, draped in an outer robe, and was not at all surprised to see him enter. I simply rose calmly and performed a salute. "Your Highness." He looked at me, his eyes completely bloodshot. He opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat, unable to come out. I waited quietly, my mind as clear as a mirror. The conditions the emperor had set, along with the tension between him and Qingning, were things I had long anticipated. After a long while, Xiao Qian seemed to finally make up his mind, his voice low and hoarse as he said, "It's late, let's rest." The red candles burned brightly, casting light on his complex and inscrutable expression. I took the initiative to remove his outer robe, my fingertips inadvertently brushing against his Adam's apple. His body stiffened slightly, but he did not pull away. "Your Highness." I blew out the candle and whispered softly in the darkness, "Tomorrow, I will personally seek an audience with the Grand Princess to deliver the copied sutras and plead for Qingning's brother, Songyun." Xiao Qian's voice was hoarse. "This time, I have wronged you." I naturally wrapped my arms around him and said softly, "What are you saying, Your Highness? We are husband and wife, one and the same. It is my duty to share your worries." I deliberately spoke close to his ear, my breath warm. Xiao Qian's breathing suddenly grew heavier. The hazy moonlight filtered in, illuminating the faint blush that spread across the base of his ears. I lowered my gaze, concealing a trace of cold mockery in my eyes. Recalling the images from those fire avoidance illustrations I had seen, I responded to him with a raw yet proactive eagerness. He was ultimately overcome with passion, letting out a low growl as he pulled me tightly into his embrace. The crimson bed curtains fell shut, swaying gently in the night. The next morning, when I woke, the space beside me was already empty. Yunshu helped me rise, whispering softly, "Before dawn, the crown prince went to the moon viewing pavilion." I faced the rhombus-patterned mirror, carefully tracing my brows with kohl, and upon hearing this, merely smiled faintly. The reflection showed a face adorned with cloud-like hair and floral beauty, the eyes beneath clear and composed. "No matter. Let our people know that they can inadvertently let Consort Qing know that the reason His Highness was willing to come last night was entirely because she begged him to save her brother." Yunshu understood immediately. "Yes, Your Highness. If the consort learns that this matter was personally requested by her, her gratitude will surely be especially profound." I took a sip of rouge, my lips now brilliantly colored. If she knew that she had personally pushed Xiao Qian into my bed, how bitter that taste would be. But the agony of this slow torment was only the beginning. What I wanted was never a single night of favor. Instead, I intended to use this one night to plant an irremovable thorn between her and Xiao Qian, inside the Lan Yu pavilion. Qing Ning, upon learning that Xiao Qian had spent the night in my room, accidentally shattered the teacup in her hand. He promised me, she murmured, her eyes filled with disbelief. When Xiao Qian dragged his weary body over to explain, she first broke down in tears, but upon hearing all of this was to save your brother. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her, jolting her back to clarity. She threw herself into Xiao Qian's arms, her eyes brimming with tears. Your Highness, for my sake, you've endured such humiliation. Watching her suppress her jealousy and feign understanding, a flicker of guilt passed through Xiao Qian's eyes as he held her even tighter. From that day on, Xiao Qian would come to my room every few days. Each time, Qing Ning would stand at the gate of Lan Yu Pavilion, gazing obsessively at his retreating figure until the door closed, then bite her lip and leave. But my belly remained still, showing no signs of life. Xiao Qian had no choice but to visit more frequently. At such times, I would wear an exquisite doudou beneath my nightgown, perfume myself with a delicate fragrance, and do my best to cooperate as instructed by medical texts and erotic illustrations. Compared to Qingning, I was even more anxious to conceive a child. Only by giving birth to the legitimate eldest son could my position be truly secured. At first, Xiao Qian still carried a certain aloofness, but after all, the human heart is made of flesh. Seeing that I never complained and managed everything properly, his tense expression gradually softened. Sometimes when we dined together, he would even ask about the amusing stories from my childhood on the frontier. As the autumn hunt approached, on the day the list was announced, another set of porcelain was shattered in the moon-embracing pavilion. Xiao Qian was only taking me, his principal consort, along in the hunting grounds. Tense, our days and nights together made both him and me increasingly at ease. That night while I was bathing, he stumbled in through the steam, his steps unsteady with drink. Seeing the faint, indistinct figure in the bathtub, he froze in place. Your Highness, I called out softly, without panic or attempt to hide. Instead, I rose slowly from the water, letting droplets slide down my skin. The candlelight cast a soft glow upon me. His Adam's apple bobbed, and his eyes darkened with deep desire. Arjuan, he called my childhood name in a hoarse voice, then scooped me up and carried me toward the bed. That night, he was exceptionally gentle and exceptionally captivated. 7 days later, the imperial carriage returned to the palace. My monthly cycle was, for the first time ever, 5 days late. A faint suspicion stirred in my heart, but I suppressed it and carried on with my daily routine as usual. One morning, as I was trimming the flower branches in the courtyard, Qingning barged in unannounced. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, clearly indicating she hadn't slept all night. My sister is truly skilled, she said, with a sharp tone. During the autumn hunt these past few days, you've completely bewitched His Highness. It's a pity, though, that every time he returns from your place, he spends a long time with me. He says, seeing your pretentiously aloof face bores him. I leisurely trimmed a withered branch, not even lifting my eyelids. Is that so? Then why is my sister so full of anger today? Have you given up on saving your brother? She froze instantly, like a snake pinned at its vital point, all her arrogance vanishing without a trace. She glared at me fiercely, her chest heaving with emotion, and finally forced out through gritted teeth, what else can you do besides threatening me with my brother? His Highness will only ever have me in his heart. I smiled faintly and handed the scissors to Yunshu. I hope you'll always think this way, little sister. She left in a fury. Yunshu whispered, Your Highness, she now harbors a deep hatred for you. I fear she might. Let her hate. I brushed my sleeve and let my gaze fall upon my still flat stomach. Someone whose cards have been laid bare can hate all they want, but they won't be able to turn the world upside down. Over a month later, a banquet was held in the palace. I attended together with Xiao Qian, with Qing Ning following closely behind. During the banquet, her gaze occasionally swept over my abdomen, carrying undisguised anxiety. Taking advantage of Xiao Qian leaving his seat to propose a toast, she approached me with a wine cup in hand. Her voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just enough for the nearby tables to hear. Sister, it's been so long. Why is there still no news from your belly? My brother in prison. Can't wait much longer. I picked up the wine glass, took a small sip, and looked at her calmly. Lady Qing. The royal lineage is a matter of state importance. How can you speak so recklessly about it? Moreover, your brother has violated the law, and his case will be judged according to the statutes. What does that have to do with my pregnancy? She was left speechless, her face turning pale with anger. Just as she was about to retort, she caught sight of Xiao Qian returning out of the corner of her eye. Suddenly, she grabbed my wrist, her voice abruptly breaking into a sob. Sister, I know you resent me, but how could you curse my brother to die in prison? Before her words even faded, she suddenly threw herself backward, pulling me along with her as we tumbled into the nearby Tay Pond. Help! The water instantly submerged my mouth and nose in the chaos. I saw Xiao Qian jump into the water without hesitation, swimming desperately toward Qing Ning, who was flailing and struggling. He held her tightly, lifting her toward the shore, never once looking back at me. Fortunately, Yun Shu was a strong swimmer and immediately jumped in to rescue me. I was soaked to the bone, shivering from the cold on the shore. Qing Ning lay in Xiao Qian's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Your Highness. I just told my sister that I might be pregnant, and she suddenly pushed me into the water. Our child. I looked at her in shock. Pregnant? I had no idea about this. Xiao Qian's gaze shot toward me like a blade, filled with disappointment and anger. Xie Songyun, how could you be so vicious? Your Highness. Please see the truth. Yun Shu immediately knelt to the ground. It was Consort Qing herself who grabbed the lady's hand and fell. I saw it clearly with my own eyes. You're lying. Qing Ning screamed. You wretched servant. Of course you'd side with your mistress. Xiao Qian's face turned ashen. Clearly believing Qing Ning, he looked at my disheveled state, his eyes showing not a trace of pity, only disgust. Someone, take the crown princess. As soon as the word princess left his lips, I felt the world spin around me, my vision went dark, and I collapsed limply to the ground. When I woke again, I was in the warm chamber of the cunning palace. The Empress was tightly holding my hand, her face unable to conceal a mix of joy and reproach. Songyun, you foolish child, you've been 2 months pregnant, why didn't you tell me sooner? I blinked weakly, a timely blush spreading across my face, my voice faint and delicate. Mother, I wanted to wait until the pregnancy was stable after 3 months to give you and father a surprise. The Empress, upon hearing this, felt both heartache and amusement, gently patting my hand. You, child, are just too steady and sensible. At that moment, the Emperor entered with Xiao Qian. The Emperor's face was stern, with displeasure as he glared at Xiao Qian. Fool, Songyun is carrying my royal grandson, her body heavy with child. How could she possibly push someone else? Hurry and apologize to Songyun. Xiao Qian looked at me with a complicated expression, and finally stepped forward, lowering his voice to say, Songyun, I misunderstood you. I lowered my eyelashes and gently shook my head. Your Highness was simply too concerned to think clearly. I understand. Standing nearby, Qing Ning, whose face had turned deathly pale, now looked as if her eyes were about to spit fire. The Empress cast a faint glance at her, her tone cooling by several degrees. Qing Ning, I originally thought you were a sensible one. It seems now that I was mistaken. Qing Ning fell to her knees with a thud. Your Majesty, please forgive me. This humble servant, I was just so frantic, afraid of losing the child, that I spoke out of turn. Xiao Qian showed a look of pity and pleaded on her behalf. Mother, Qing Ning is also a victim. She was just frightened, and I fear for the dragon heir. The Empress waved her hand, cutting him off. Enough. Since you are also with child, from now on, rest well in the moon-embracing pavilion. There is no need for you to come out unless necessary. These words struck like a thunderclap. Qing Ning suddenly looked up, her face deathly pale. This was practically house arrest in disguise. After everyone had left, only Yun Shu and I remained in the bedchamber. I gently stroked my still flat stomach, a faint smile curling at the corner of my lips. This child has come at just the right time. Yun Shu lowered her voice, unable to hide her confusion. Your Highness, when did you become pregnant? How could I not know? I chuckled softly, a hint of slyness flashing in my eyes. Of course, I don't know either. Watching her astonished expression, I leisurely explained, but at that moment, admitting it could both clear me of the suspicion of harming the imperial heir and, in turn, put Qingning in her place, letting her taste the bitterness of being confined. Why wouldn't I admit it? The next day, rewards from the palace indeed flowed into the Eastern Palace like a steady stream. Brocades, tonics, and jewelry were displayed in dazzling array, with the majority being delivered to my bedchamber. In contrast, the rewards sent to Qingning's side appeared rather meager. She stood beneath the corridor, watching the eunuchs coming and going in my hall, her gaze sharp as if laced with poison. I approached slowly, my voice so soft that only the two of us could hear. You were frightened yesterday, sister. However, now that we both carry the imperial air, you must act with greater composure. What if you startle the baby and cause His Highness to worry? That remark struck right at her sore spot. She abruptly raised her hand to push me, but I was already prepared. Just as her fingertips were about to touch my sleeve, I skillfully tripped her with a subtle move at my feet. Letting out a startled cry as I fell backward, Songyun, Xiao Qian's voice rang out at just the right moment. He rushed over quickly, just in time to see me clutching my stomach, my face pale as I collapsed to the ground, and Qingning's hand was still frozen in mid-air. It wasn't me, Your Highness, I didn't touch her. Qingning hurriedly explained, her face ashen, but I remained silent, only lifting my tear-filled eyes to gaze wordlessly at Xiao Qian. Xiao Qian furrowed his brow, picked me up in one swift motion, and cast a cold glance at Qingning. Go back and stay put. Without my orders, you are not to leave the moon-viewing pavilion. He carried me back to my bedchamber. After the imperial physician took my pulse, he said there was nothing seriously wrong, but I needed to rest quietly and recuperate. I tugged at Xiao Qian's sleeve, my voice pleading, Your Highness, please don't blame Qingning. She is just worried about her brother. Won't you stay and keep me company? Looking at my pale face, his heart softened, and he ultimately decided to stay that night. I nestled obediently in his embrace and said softly, Your Highness, tomorrow, allow your humble consort to request an audience with His Majesty. Although brother Qingning has made mistakes, for the sake of Qingning and the child in her womb, spare his life so that our sister may rest peacefully during her pregnancy. Xiao Qian was deeply moved, stroking my hair. He sighed and said, Jun, you are always so understanding and considerate of the bigger picture. I have failed you. I buried my face in his chest, hiding the cold smile on my lips. The next day, I personally went to the imperial study and pleaded with the emperor to show mercy. Using the reason of accumulating blessings for the unborn child and hoping for Qingning's peace of mind, the emperor praised my virtue and finally granted my request, issuing an edict to dismiss Qingning's brother from his post and exile him, sparing his life. The news came that Qingning's brother was released that very night at dinner time. I ordered Yunshu to carefully dress me up and put on the newly gifted pearl earrings. Yunshu was puzzled. Your Highness, the Crown Prince went to the moon-viewing pavilion as soon as he left the court. I'm afraid tonight. I smiled at the bronze mirror. He will come. Sure enough, as the hour approached midnight, the door to the bedchamber was gently pushed open. An embrace, carrying the chill of the night dew, enveloped me from behind. Jun, you've worked hard. Xiao Qian's voice was laced with exhaustion. I pretended to have just woken up, turning to nestle into his embrace, my tone carrying just the right amount of dependence. Since Your Highness has come, I no longer feel the hardship. I am merely sharing your burdens. He let out a long sigh, holding me even tighter. You are the one who understands. Qingning, she caused another scene today. I remained silent, understanding dawning in my heart since her elder brother was no longer in danger. She naturally had nothing left to hold her back. I'm afraid she'll only cling to Xiao Qian even more relentlessly, which will instead make him grow weary of her. And the news of my father and brother's great victory over the enemy in the northwest arrived in the capital early this morning. Xiao Qian knows better than anyone whose side he should be on at this moment. The moonlight outside the window is hazy, and in a place where he cannot see me, I slowly curl the corners of my lips. The pieces have been set, and I am certain to win this game. With my father and brothers achieving successive victories in the northwest, His Majesty is overjoyed, and his rewards to me have grown increasingly generous. Xiao Qian has also been visiting my palace noticeably more often. Though I know he is merely putting on a show for the court, I am more than happy to play along. Qingning's jealousy almost overflowed beyond the moon-embraced pavilion. The way she looks at me now is as if she wishes she could carve a piece of flesh from my body. Yunshu, I set down the teacup, my voice calm. There should be movement over at the moon-embraced pavilion. Have someone keep a close watch, especially those who handle medicinal herbs. 3 days later, Yunshu quietly reported, Your Highness. Someone indeed secretly brought a package from outside the palace. It has been examined and confirmed to be a highly potent abortifacient. I twirled the jade bracelet on my wrist, a faint smile playing on my lips. She is quite impatient. Switch that packet into the bird's nest soup she consumes daily. Make sure she receives it with her own hands. That evening during dinner, I was playing a game of chess with Xiao Qian. A palace made from Lanyu Pavilion rushed in. Panicked, Your Highness, the Liangdi is bleeding. By the time we arrived, the imperial physician had just finished taking her pulse and shook his head with a sigh. Your Highness, please accept my condolences, the royal heir could not be saved. Qing Ning lay on the bed with a deathly pale face. The moment she saw Xiao Qian, tears streamed down her cheeks, and she pointed a trembling finger directly at me. It was her, Your Highness, it was the crown princess. She must have put something in my bowl of bird's nest. Xiao Qian's expression darkened as he turned his gaze toward me. I promptly feigned shock and hurt. Sister, what do you mean by that? That blood-red bird's nest is a standard provision from the palace. And both you and I received our portions. Moreover, I lifted my eyes to meet Xiao Qian's gaze, my tone steady. Your Highness, I find this matter rather suspicious. Perhaps we should investigate who handled the ingredients today, and who has had any improper contact with the outside world recently. Xiao Qian immediately ordered a strict investigation. Within half an hour, evidence was presented. It turned out to be a trusted palace made by Qing Ning's side who had secretly left the palace 2 days earlier and purchased the medicine from a remote pharmacy. The testimony of the pharmacy owner and the confession of the palace maid were all in order. Qing Ning was completely panicked. No, it's not like this. Someone is framing me. I gently interrupted her, my tone carrying a faint hint of suggestion. Could it be, dear sister, that you never actually wanted to bear His Highness's child in the first place, and that's why you resorted to such a desperate measure? You're talking nonsense. Xiao Qian immediately refuted. How could Qingning not want my child? I feigned hesitation and lowered my voice. I've also heard, before Qingning entered the palace, she seemed to have a very close distant cousin who now serves in the Southern City Military Command. Back then, the two of them were almost engaged. Xiao Qian abruptly turned to stare at Qingning. Is this true? You never mentioned it. Qingning's face instantly turned deathly pale. Your Highness, that was all in the past. I have long since severed all ties with him. No ties. I raised an eyebrow slightly and took an inconspicuous cloth bundle from Yunshu. Then why, just a few days ago, did someone specifically entrust a palace servant to deliver these specially preserved plums from your hometown to you, sister? You've been treasuring them so much, hiding them at the very bottom of your vanity case. Inside the cloth bundle were just a few ordinary preserved plums. Xiao Qian's face instantly darkened. Like iron, he stared fixedly at Qingning, his gaze cold and unfamiliar. Qingning struggled to get off the bed and grab hold of him. Your Highness, please listen to my explanation. These plums are just enough. Xiao Qian abruptly flung her hand away with such force that she was thrown back onto the bed. Say no more. You, take care of yourself. He turned and left without a trace of hesitation. Behind him came the sound of Qingning's heartbroken sobs. I stood at the palace entrance, glanced back at her one last time, and a faint smile curled at the corner of my lips. Then, with an elegant turn, I stepped into the moonlight beneath the corridor. Tonight's moonlight is truly beautiful. Qingning, having lost both her child and the emperor's favor, shut herself indoors all day long. Although Xiao Qian did not explicitly punish her, he never set foot in the moon-viewing pavilion again. Drowning his sorrows in wine all day long that night, he came to my palace reeking of alcohol. His steps were unsteady, and his brow was clouded with an unshakable gloom. I went to greet him, helping him sit by the couch, and he clung to me as if grasping a lifeline, burying his face deeply in the crook of my neck, his breathing heavy and feverish. Arduan, his voice was hoarse, laced with suppressed pain. Why did things turn out this way? I let him lean against me, my fingers gently combing through his slightly disheveled hair, my voice softening to a whisper. Your Highness, it's hard to have it both ways in this world. Some things, perhaps, were misguided from the very beginning. My words seemed to offer solace, yet carried a tone of lament, causing him to tighten his embrace even more. Sensing his emotions begin to ease, I lowered my head slightly, revealing a slender, pale nape that glowed softly under the candlelight. The faint, delicate fragrance from her hair, mingled with the elegant scent of incense on her nightgown, silently lingered at the tip of his nose. His breathing indeed grew heavier, and the warmth of his hand resting on my waist gradually intensified. The moment had come. I turned my face slightly, my lips almost brushing against his ear, and whispered softly, "Your Highness, the imperial physician examined my pulse today and said that the pregnancy has stabilized. It has been 3 full months now." I paused, feeling the sudden tension in his body, then continued in a shy, trembling voice, "If your Highness wishes, I can." He stiffened slightly, looked up at me, his eyes hazy with drink, yet swirling with complex emotions, eventually overshadowed by a heavy desire. His Adam's apple bobbed violently, and he finally leaned down, laying me gently upon the brocade quilt. Candlelight flickered red, the spring night's canopy warm. He was more gentle and restrained than ever before, his sweat dripping onto the side of my neck, carrying a scorching heat. The next day, he stayed for breakfast, a subtle hint of dependence now lingering in his expression. Just as he was serving me a dish, a faint commotion could be heard outside the door. Looking up, I saw Qingning standing there timidly, dressed in an extremely plain moon-white ruchuan, wearing no makeup, her dark hair adorned only with a simple silver hairpin. My heart skipped a beat. Since she entered the Eastern Palace, when had she ever worn such plain colors? When something goes against the norm, there must be a hidden reason. "Your Highness," her voice choked, her eyes instantly reddening. "Last night, I dreamed of the first time we met in the Imperial Garden. You said you loved me most in this dress, like a magnolia under the moonlight." Xiao Qian's hand, holding the chopsticks, paused, his gaze fell upon her, clearly softening. Seeing this, Qingning let a tear fall perfectly. "It is my misfortune that I could not protect your Highness's child. I dare not ask for your forgiveness. I only beg of you to take care of yourself and not harm your health with more drinking." Every word struck right at the softest spot in Xiao Qian's heart. He remained silent for a moment, then finally set down his chopsticks, stood up, walked over to her, and gently pulled her into his embrace. "Let's not bring up the past anymore." Qingning sobbed quietly in his arms, but her gaze drifted over his shoulder, casting a clear look of triumph toward me. Xiao Qian patted her back soothingly and said gently, "Let's go, I'll take you back." Watching their retreating figures walking arm in arm, Yunshu stomped her foot in anger. "Your Highness, how could she just?" I leisurely scooped a spoonful of bird's nest and brought it to my lips, my expression unchanged. "What's the rush?" I gently stirred the translucent soup in the bowl, a slight smile curling at the corner of my mouth. "The harder she performs, the more devastating it will be for His Highness to see her true colors." The autumn sunlight filtered through the window lattice, falling upon my armor and reflecting a glint of cold light. Let her jump around. For a few more days slipped by like flowing water, and my belly had swelled high. With the due date drawing near, it happened to be the Lantern Festival Palace banquet, and out of consideration, the Emperor and Empress granted Xiao Qian and me permission to leave early. The carriage moved steadily along the palace road. Xiao Qian sat in the main seat with his eyes closed, resting his mind, while Qingning sat opposite him. Her gaze occasionally drifted toward my belly, carrying a barely concealed complexity of emotions. The atmosphere inside the carriage was delicate. I gently stroked my belly, feeling the occasional movements of the child within, then looked up at Qingning, a gentle smile spreading across my lips. "Little Lime, would you like to come over and feel? This little one has been quite lively lately, often kicking me." Without waiting for her response, I took her hand and gently pressed it against my rounded belly. The moment our palms touched, she jerked back as if scalded. "Now is the time." Following the force of her pulling her hand away, I let out a startled cry and fell backward, hitting the carriage wall heavily. I immediately clutched my stomach, my face instantly turning deathly pale. My pained cry was full of misery and helplessness. "Ah, my stomach, Your Highness. Save our child." Xiao Qian was jolted awake. Seeing this, his pupils contracted sharply, and he immediately rushed forward, holding me tightly in his arms, his voice was strained with panic. Songyun, don't be afraid, I'm here, Your Highness, please, don't blame Qingning, my sister. I leaned weakly in his embrace, my breath faint, tears streaming down my face. She surely didn't mean to. Qingning was completely flustered, waving her hands repeatedly. I didn't, Your Highness, I truly didn't push her. She did it herself. Enough, Xiao Qian interrupted her sharply, his eyes filled with disappointment and anger. Qingning, you have let me down so deeply. Songyun is pregnant and has been pleading for your brother's sake everywhere. Yet you, driven by personal resentment, would harm her like this. When did you become so unrecognizable? After roaring these words, his chest heaved violently. He closed his eyes briefly, as if unwilling to look at her any longer. Your Highness, it hurts so much. The baby. I let out a timely, more agonizing moan, and a glaringly bright stain of blood seeped through my skirt. Xiao Qian stared at the crimson staining his palm. His face turning deathly pale, he roared toward the outside of the carriage. Faster, go faster, back to the Eastern Palace. The carriage raced through the night. As soon as we returned to the Eastern Palace, Xiao Qian immediately scooped me up and rushed toward the already prepared birthing room. For the first time completely ignoring Qingning's cries behind him in the delivery room, the effects of the labor-inducing medicine had fully taken hold. The intense, wave-like contractions surged over me, nearly swallowing me whole. Sweat and tears soaked the hair at my temples. I bit my lip hard, enduring the torment I had long anticipated but still found unbearable. Your Highness, I fear I may not make it. My voice was as faint as a thread, carrying through the screen to the outside. Songyun, don't say such nonsense, you will be fine. Xiao Qian's voice held a panic I had never heard before. Don't worry, Your Highness, childbirth always takes some time, Qingning also advised from outside the room. She's not some village woman from your hometown. Xiao Qian suddenly interrupted her, his voice hoarse. She's been in pain for so long, she shouldn't have had to suffer like this. And whose fault is it? Hearing the guilt and heartache in his words, I knew the timing was just right. Husband, Arjuan, I'm afraid I won't make it. I used all my strength to let out my final lament. Then, with her eyes closed, she collapsed weakly onto the delivery bed, her arms hanging limply. Songyun, Xiao Qian could no longer care about taboos and rushed into the delivery room, tightly grasping her cold hand. His voice trembled as he pleaded, wake up, I won't allow anything to happen to you. I want you to live, please. Give me a chance to make it up to you. At that very moment, the Empress arrived in person with the imperial physician and urged him to step outside and wait. Xiao Qian shook his head forcefully, his eyes red as he roared, I won't leave, she is my wife, and inside is my child. I'm not going anywhere. Outside. Qingning listened to his declaration, her body swaying as she nearly lost her balance, the color draining from her face. The imperial physician quickly applied acupuncture, and I slowly regained consciousness, holding the ginseng slice handed to me by the nanny, and pushed again under the midwife's guidance. Crown Princess, I can see the head. Push. I gripped Xiao Qian's hand tightly, drawing strength from him, and let out one final cry of pain. Wow, the loud cry of a baby pierced the tense air. Congratulations, Your Highness, congratulations, Crown Princess. It's a healthy little imperial grandson. Yun Shu's voice was filled with joy. I lay weakly on the bed, holding Xiao Qian's hand in return, my eyes brimming with tears. Husband, our child, I want to see him. The wet nurse placed the swaddled baby into my arms, gazing at that rosy, delicate little face. My tears fell once again. Xiao Qian carefully took the child into his arms, gently wiping away my tears with his fingertip. His voice was softer than ever before. You're a mother now, yet you still cry like a child. Holding our son in one arm, he wrapped the other around me, patting my back gently. Be good now, get some proper rest and regain your strength. You can look at our child properly once you've woken up. Under his gentle soothing, extreme exhaustion washed over me, and I could no longer hold on, falling into a deep sleep outside the window. The night was at its darkest, and from this moment on, the fates of certain people had already begun to change. The news of my safe delivery of the legitimate heir spread, filling the Eastern Palace with joy and celebration. The Empress personally came to visit, holding the little imperial grandson in her arms, unable to put him down. But then, Her phoenix-like eyes turned frosty as she mentioned Qingning's attempt to harm the imperial heir. A woman as venomous as this cannot be allowed to live, the Empress declared with unwavering resolve. By the time Qingning was brought in, she had long lost her former radiance. She knelt on the ground, weeping bitterly, clutching at Xiao Qian's robe as she pleaded, "Your Highness, spare my life, for the sake of our past affection, please spare me." Xiao Qian's face showed a struggle, and he finally looked toward me on the bed. I propped up my weak body and spoke softly, "Your Majesty." Sister Qingning was merely confused for a moment. Now that I and the child are safe, perhaps we could spare her life. The Empress looked at me deeply and finally sighed, "Enough. In consideration of the fact that you once saved me, I will spare your life. From this day forward, you are banished to the cold palace to reflect on your mistakes." Qingning's face was as pale as paper, and as she was dragged away by the palace attendants, the look she gave me was filled with deep-seated hatred. The days in the cold palace were bleak, yet she refused to be resigned. Every night, she would sing the love song she once shared with Xiao Qian, her voice mournful, trying to rekindle old feelings. Not long after, the emperor fell gravely ill. We were ordered to enter the palace to attend to his illness. Halfway there, I suddenly stopped and whispered in Yunshu's ear, "Go to the cold palace and make arrangements, withdraw the guards, then add something to her food, make sure she sleeps until tomorrow." Yunshu's expression turned serious, and she immediately went to carry out the order. I wanted Qingning to be unable to hear the funeral bell, and I also wanted to give her a chance to break out. This play would be incomplete without its leading lady. That night, the bell tolling the emperor's death resounded through the palace walls. On the second day, as the entire nation mourned, Qingning, shockingly, painted her face with powder and rouge, donned a vibrant red palace gown, and stormed out of the cold palace, charging straight toward Xiao Qian in the morning hall. All was draped in solemn white, only she stood out in a glaring, ghostly red. "Your Highness," she giggled foolishly, "I knew you would come for me." The Empress flew into a rage. "You wretch, how dare you be so insolent before the late Emperor's spirit?" Xiao Qian instinctively wanted to plead for mercy, but I gently pressed his arm. "Your Majesty." I changed my address, my voice soft yet carrying immense weight. "All the civil and military officials are watching. You are about to ascend the throne. You must not let personal feelings interfere with public duty." He stiffened, watching Qingning's frenzied state, then swept his gaze over the skeptical eyes of the surrounding ministers, his own eyes gradually turning cold. "Guards," he stepped forward, his voice heavy with sorrow yet resolute, "take this madwoman away and beat her to death." Qingning's smile froze on her face, her eyes widening in disbelief. Your Highness, you can't do this to me. You said you would always." The sound of the wooden board falling drowned out her cries. In the end, everything fell into silence. Xiao Qian did not look back and continued to preside over the funeral rites. I knew that in his heart, the lingering affection for Qingning had long since dissipated in the face of power. The new emperor ascended the throne. I was infeft as empress, and our son naturally became the crown prince. I took the initiative to select concubines for him, specifically seeking out many women who bore some resemblance to Qingning, whether in their eyes and brows, their demeanor, or their singing voices. At first, he found it novel, but as time passed, even he could no longer remember exactly what Qingning looked like. The court affairs were busy, and the harem was filled with a chorus of beauties. In just 10 years, Xiao Qian, barely past 40, was already running out of energy. The crown prince turned 15 and began overseeing state affairs. I governed from behind the curtain, managing both the imperial court and the inner palace with perfect order. Another harsh winter came, and Xiao Qian fell gravely ill before passing away. As the funeral bells tolled, I sat in the Phoenix Palace, gazing at my still dignified reflection in the bronze mirror. "Your Majesty, it is time to change your attire," Yunshu said softly. I rose slowly, allowing the palace attendants to dress me in the Empress Dowager's ceremonial robes. The reflection in the mirror was dignified and noble, a mother to the nation. Throughout this journey, I have never sought anyone's genuine heart. What I want has always been clear from the very beginning: to stand at the pinnacle of power and protect the family's honor. Now, everything is just right. After hearing the stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.